Poker's legendary champions, next generation stars, and tireless ambassadors of the game, sharing their wisdom and guiding your journey to high achievement on the green felt. This is Chasing Poker Greatness with your host, Brad Wilson.
Welcome, my friend, to another episode of the Chasing Poker Greatness podcast. As always, this is your host, the founder of ChasingPokerGreatness.com, Brad Wilson. And on today's show, I have the great pleasure of welcoming back Ignition Poker-sponsored streamer and one half of the PokerCoaching.com study stream dynamic duo, Shaundle Crazysixes Pruitt. Shaundle's a long-time and accomplished MTT wizard who exudes confidence and has every reason to do so. He's just one of those dudes who consistently does things the right way. Whether it's managing his volume, battling on the green felt, or keeping his game sharp through regular, dedicated poker study, Shaundle is a modern-day poker warrior. Some of the greatness bombs you're about to greedily gobble up in this episode include secrets on managing your energy so that you can carve out time for doing the things that are most important to you, the specific factors Shaundle believes you ought to consider when choosing your next poker coach, what your expectations ought to be on the student side of a private coaching arrangement, and much, much more. So without any further ado, I bring to you a longtime friend of Chasing Poker Greatness, the one and only Shaundle Crazysixes Pruitt. Shaundle, welcome to the show, sir. How you been?
I am great. I'm excited to be back, man. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing well. It's been quite a while. I think that, what were you, like, in the top 10 of episodes, I think?
You're one of the early ones. It was,
one of the real early ones.
Ago? Was it about a year ago or so? Maybe even longer.
It's been a year and a half, I think. Yeah. So it's interesting that a year and a half can feel like such a long time, but also I realized that CPG's only been going for a year and a half, which is kind of surprising to me too, because it feels like it's been going for much longer.
Yeah, it feels like we've been doing this for a long time, right? And it's only been a year and a half, and we've come so far, it feels like. I mean, I feel like I've had some growth. CPG is growing like crazy, a lot of incredible guests. So I'm sure that's been exciting, but yeah, man.
Yeah, everything's exciting except for the pandemic and the life for the last year. Everything business-wise has been exciting. It's just, that sort of grim reaper that's been like over our heads, the long shadow over our lives for the past year. Hopefully that's winding down and life can go back to some kind of semblance of normal in the near future, because I'm ready to hit the real world and see you guys at poker tournaments and have dinner and conversations with all these people that I've met through the pod, right?
What is that? That sounds like fun. Wow.
Yeah. I haven't seen anybody. I haven't met with anybody. Actually, that's halfway true. Nick Howard did a poker detox retreat in Atlanta, and it was, I believe, early March of 2020. So it was like right before the lockdowns and everything. As a matter of fact, when the detox crew rolled in, there was a lot of fear on their end that they weren't going to be able to fly out of Atlanta because of the pandemic. So that's really the only poker people I've gotten to spend time with through the whole course of CPG in real life. Anyway, I've spent a lot of virtual time with people.
Yeah, that's funny you say that. I think the last time I had an opportunity to spend time with poker people or play live poker was like 2 weeks before everything got shut down. Poker Coaching had a meetup for all the coaching where we, discussed business and coaching and whatnot. So we all flew in 2 weeks before the pandemic, and that was the last time I played live or really traveled or done anything. So yeah, can't wait, man.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's one of those things that like we'll look back on it as like, I guess
hard for me to say. I know Black Friday was very devastating and brutal. I do look back on the positives that sprang from Black Friday. I think obviously this is a much more serious matter and lots of people have lost their lives and all of that will, you don't come back from that. And there's lots of trauma that's built in through this pandemic. For my personal life experience, I could see how I will not, I hope I don't take for granted the freedom of just being out in public and the freedom of travel like I did before, because, again, I didn't realize that such a thing could just be kind of taken away overnight. And then it was, and now it gives me a newfound appreciation to, just be able to, go eat some food in a restaurant.
Without fear and just walk around and do your thing. Yeah, man, it's kind of crazy. It can all be taken away at any moment. And people really just take it for granted, myself included, a lot, I mean, everybody a little. And
it's not a thing that you have daily gratitude for, or it wasn't a thing that people had daily gratitude for until it kind of got taken away. And I think that, for the near future anyway, people will value these things. I mean, even going to sporting events, right? Like it's a fun time, a really fun experience. And you just kind of assume that you'll be able to catch some games over the course of a year, and then you just don't have the option anymore.
Yeah, that kids sports, all this kind of stuff. And it's like, wow, I have 2 kids and they missed entire seasons in the summer and early, like school was out and there was daycare. There was nowhere you could take your kids and work was closed. So yeah, man, it's kind of crazy. I'm glad that's coming to an end.
Yeah, me too. So we can move beyond the pandemic talk for now. It will probably rear its ugly head at some point in the conversation. But I want to start out this show by asking you what you've been up to in the last, year and a half since you've been on the show.
So the past year and a half, since I've been on the show, I guess the big news for me, one of the biggest developments is Ignition started sponsoring streamers. And I was one of the first streamers they reached out to. I put a lot of volume on the site. I put a lot of content out from streaming that site. I've had a lot of success. So that was extremely exciting for them to enter the market and kind of pick me up on the team. And there's a lot of other great streamers out there they picked up as well. So that was very exciting. Been steadily improving. I've had some really nice scores, won a trophy, had a 5-figure score in the past few months. Reaching out, getting some more different coaching. I got still working with some different coaches. So yeah, I'm just still in love with the game, streaming, doing some work with global poker as well, and poker coaching. So yeah, everything is going great, man. Yeah.
You mentioned multiple coaches. Why multiple coaches?
I think I'm at a point in my career where, I spend a lot of time working on my game and trying to get better. And I like to get different perspectives, different outlooks. I have a coach who get coaching from Ryan LaPlante. I really like the way he approaches a lot of situations, his creativity with the exploitative side, while also meshing the theory as well. And then I've also been getting some coaching from Matt Affleck because I really love the way he studies and dives in and dissects the game through a theory based. So kind of going both those routes, I think for a player like myself is good because I don't really like to be in a box. I like to see the exploitative side, but I know theoretically I want to become a stronger player as well. And it's a process. Trying to, take all those different styles and everything we're learning and kind of incorporate it into my own game.
Yeah, I mean, having multiple perspectives is always good. And especially even just having multiple coaches to find one that resonates with you, that you click with and that you get work done and you're able to make fast gains. I think different strokes for different folks, right? And sometimes somebody that works very well for one human doesn't work very well for another. And so sort of it's on you as a player to seek out the coach that is going to give you the biggest bang for your buck and going to make the biggest impact in your game. I will say this about Matt Affleck. He came on the show as a guest, and what I'll always remember about him is afterwards, he had been coaching people and he knew that I had been coaching a significant amount of people in the cash game streets. And he said, hey, could you, for 30 minutes, could I just ask you some questions about your coaching methodology? Like, how do you approach it? What are lessons that you've learned? And that's something that like always stuck with me as impressive. Just wants to know what other people are doing, wants to see if there's anything he could incorporate into his coaching methodology. You know, those are the kinds of coaches that you want in your career, that genuinely care about not just playing cards or not just playing cards or making money from coaching, but genuinely care about the art and the craft of being as good of a coach as they can, because it's unfortunately a little bit rare as it relates to the poker space.
Yeah, I mean, he really actually cares. And, you know, one of the first things he'll help you do is, you know, obviously have a consultation and kind of leak bind and leak bust and see what you're really struggling on and look at the data. I really like that kind of stuff. And, you know, I do think some people are like gonna get one coach. For me, I mean, I love the game and I have a lot of good relationships in the poker community. So if there's somebody coaching that I like, I'll have 3, 5, 10 coaches. You know, if I think I can click with this person, I can learn well from them. And I think, you know, they can be a resource. I don't mind having as many coaches as, you know, as necessary, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the things that I've done that I found to be pretty helpful as it relates to private coaching is, you mentioned the consult, right? With Matt.
Yep.
Yeah, the consult. So I've had a consult for a while, and it's a free consult. It's very soon in the near future to not be free anymore, because for a very specific reason that I guess I'll tell you right now, or tell the listener too, is that anybody that goes through the process of booking the consultation with private coaching will realize that before you can book the consultation, you actually hit a warning page that tells you all of the things that I'm not going to do. And it's like giant red font that says, warning, I'm not the end all be all. I'm not going to answer all of your poker questions. This is my coaching methodology. This is what we do. This is the expectation. This is the frequency of sessions. This is the process. You're the hero in this journey. You're responsible for doing your work. If the expectation is that I'm going to do the work for you, don't book a consult. And that to me is like basically qualifying my students before we have the consult, of like anybody that is not a good fit for me, I want to weed them out straight away, set expectations. Just because, yeah, it's those consults, they take time, they take energy, and I want the people that I sit down with to be ready to pull the trigger and ready to go, and know what's expected of them in order so that they can progress as quickly as they want to.
Yeah, and you also just save yourself a lot of time up front from not having to sit there 15, 20, 30 minutes, whatever it may be, and you just weed those people out. Yeah, I like that. That's great.
Yeah, it's just it's a tool that I've used, and I'm like, oh yeah, I see like the people that book the consults are like, they're ready to go now. I'm not like spending time doing free ones with people who are like on the fence, or, you know, the expectation is that I sell them coaching. Like, I don't want to sell you coaching in the consultation. That is not fun for me. Basically, when we do the consult, I want you to be aware of the cost and the expectations, and
that's it.
It's more of let's hit the ground running from here.
Yeah, and that's kind of the manner in which I do it for a lot of my students. They kind of come in with the expectation we're going to work together, and let's put together some expectations, some scheduling and whatnot from there. So.
Yeah, and that's why I'm doing away with the free consults too. It's just one more barrier to make sure that the people who reach out to me are serious about improving their poker game and moving forward, because those are the people I want to work with. Like, it's not even really about the money. It's about working with people who are serious and passionate about improving and being their best selves.
Yeah, that's my favorite. Like, finding young, maybe low stakes mid-stakes players who are just kind of newish to the game. They're passionate. They want to get better. They've had some early success. They're not jaded, and things like that. So yeah, I really love that, working with that demographic myself personally.
Yeah, same. I want to spend more time working with those types of people, because that's when really the magic happens.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, those are the type of people that, like, you give them a homework assignment, they show up the next week with like a NASA report and blow you away. And you're like, those people are always successful, by the way. Just like, I'm going to put this out there in the world, the people that have a coaching session, get assigned homework, show up the next week with an organized binder of information that takes 30 minutes to go through, those people are going to be successful poker players. And the ones that show up with empty hands and are like, well, I remember the homework, but I didn't really get a chance. Like,
yep.
They tend to struggle. And that's just the reality in my experience.
Great.
So moving on from the poker coaching talk, when you began your poker career, who is the biggest influence in you becoming a professional poker player?
The biggest influence it's a tough question, because I've always kind of been outside of my wife now / at the time was maybe my girlfriend or fiance. She was a pretty big influence, maybe because she just didn't always believe in me and let me do my thing, didn't really hold me back. I didn't have family members or friends or anything to kind of push me or deter me from pursuing what I want. I've always been the kind of a person, if I fell in love with something, I'm just going to kind of go for it.
Yep.
But the people closest to you in life kind of have to let you do that, right? If you have a significant other that's gonna kind of make it hard for you to do that, or kind of be angry or something like that, it can be really difficult to kind of pursue your dreams. And I was fortunate enough to never have something like that. And if I love poker, or if I want to try to do something in life, I can just kind of go for it without having any issues, which is nice.
Yeah, without any reservations, right? It's the same as like my coaching process for getting people on the consults, right? If you always have to deal with the friction of doing something like poker, anytime you're going to the casino, your significant other gives you that red warning page with all the giant letters.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be, number one, it's probably going to be a major issue in your relationship. And number two, you're probably not going to find a lot of success, because poker's hard enough when everything's going right in your life. And when you have extra stresses layered on top of that affect you emotionally, you're just much more likely to have poor results.
Yeah, you can't have that mental weight. If you're playing, your significant other, somebody's just not happy with you doing that right now, and all you want to do is relax and play. It's just, you're not going to be able to play your A game or have that mental clarity. I don't know, like to play great if you can't just focus on the game. So,
yeah, for the listener, you can frame it like this too. Like, if you want to go to a bar and have a drink with your friend, and your significant other is like, no, you can't go out and have a drink. Well, you might still go out and have a drink, right? But I guarantee you that will be on your mind the entire time you're having your drink, like having to go home, dealing with the fallout, having a fight. It's going to have an effect on the experience of what you're doing. And poker's, it's the same way.
Yeah, exactly. If you don't have that, if you don't have the freedom to just do it from the people around you in your life, it's going to be incredibly hard to succeed.
Exactly. So the flip side is also true, right? Support your significant others as well in their endeavors. Be supportive in what they want to do, because that it comes back, right? Like it's like a boomerang. If you're not supportive in what they want to do, and you're not happy when they want to go do stuff, well, guess what? When you want to do stuff, they're probably not going to be happy either.
Yep. And pay your significant other tax, wife tax, husband tax if you're paying. Like when you win, celebrate. When you lose, do not take it home. Don't bring it back if you're running bad or things like that, and celebrate when you win.
Exactly.
That's been very successful for me.
Yep, that is. Those are greatness bombs as it relates to dealing with significant others. All right, so tell me the story of your favorite poker session ever, or the first one that kind of springs to your mind when you think of super memorable sessions.
Super memorable sessions. This is probably the most memorable session is it was pre-Black Friday. I had been playing poker for maybe a year and a half. I started with playing 1 cent, 2 cent cash game, playing the tightest ranges known to mankind before I knew anything, just kind of watching TV and just playing super nitty. But nonetheless, kind of built up, started playing some MTTs. But I misclick registered a satellite for like a 320 ticket. It was a winner take all. And I was like, oh shit, I probably have no shot. It's probably like 10% of my bankroll at the time. So I played a satellite, ended up winning the ticket to the satellite, which was a $320 Fatty to an 18K Aussie Millions package, which was a winner take all satellite for that. So I was living in Chicago at the time, just playing in literally the middle of the day or something. Maybe it was a Saturday. Got in the Saturday, ended up making a final table or whatever. Winner take all, it's kind of short, just hanging around, getting heads up. Massive deficit, double up a couple times, win the whole thing for like 18,000, and I probably at this time had like a 2K roll, something ridiculous, And, I mean, it was just so exciting because it was just a misclick register, and it was the kind of register you didn't have time to unregister.
Yeah, like congratulations, here's your seat.
Yeah, you're in there like, oh no. And then the euphoria of actually winning it and being a massive score at the time for relative to where I was in poker, how long I had been in there. So it certainly was insanely exciting. It's something I'll never forget. That has to be my most exciting session. And I also was fortunate enough to play in a exciting cash game session where it was just like a private game. And it was some guy who was just an insane gambler. And he thought he just made a bunch of money playing blackjack at a casino. And he comes to this game and just thinks he's the man. I don't know. He just the ego for not ever really having played poker. And then just because you have money and you have no fear of losing it. So this guy comes in. I had been playing this cash game for like 10, 12 hours and he comes in 12 hours deep. I was thinking about leaving and he just comes in, just dumps and dumps and dumps. And it was just like, wow, is this real life? Like it was
how much did he end up dumping?
Oh, he probably lost 6K.
At what were the stakes?
3-6. So 10, like maybe even more. I had to leave. I was like 24 hours in. I was like, I got to get out of here. I'm up. I'm like falling asleep at the table. But it was probably more than that. My goodness. But yeah, he was just playing so horribly bad. I just couldn't believe it was. I was fortunate enough to be at a table when somebody comes and dumps that hard and that bad.
Yeah, it happens, sometimes these kind of things just happen, and it's like Dunning-Kruger effect, right? Where they just don't know how bad they are. Or expectation is like, whatever, I'm good at life and I'll be good at poker too, because
yeah, I think it was more of that. Like I made a bunch of money playing blackjack. I've been wanting to play blackjack 10 times. How hard can poker be? Like,
yeah.
Come on, I crush everything I do.
Easy mode.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of just a story when I was playing live poker of this kid ran up a stack to like $25,000 at 10-20 no limit and was really just not a great poker player, but he was just destroying everyone except for me. Like I was like the one person who was like evading all of his carnage. And a friend of mine, Jamie Chevelle, who played poker at Commerce, was a reg. I don't know that he plays much poker anymore, but it was a Jewish holiday. I remember that because he's Jewish, and it was like 6 p.m. and this kid had 25K and had just tortured everybody. And he's just like racking up his chips, kind of like longingly looking at the table. Like, I can't believe I'm going to leave. Like, and he left. The kid ended up dusting all of his money to me. It felt very, very nice. Like I think I cashed out like 28K in profit on the day. When I stacked him, like one of the regs just kind of looked at me, and I believe totally earnest just said, "I hate you." Like totally meant it. I hate you.
Everybody's money.
And I'm not gonna lie, it felt great. It felt great to be hated that day.
So
I was like,
good.
this is nice. I just had like a 15 buy-in win at a 10-20 game. I'm gonna go to my room. But yeah, it was that was a really fun session. Like sometimes, somebody it happens both ways. They have a big win at blackjack, they come dust off money. I've seen people have a big win at baccarat and come and dust off like a rack of hundreds just in no time flat. Somebody runs up a $600 stack to 20,000 and then eventually dusts it all off. I've seen that happen a number of times too. Like it's just sometimes those opportunities pop up.
Yeah, it's always a good time to punch your stack if you make a bunch of money, guys. No, I'm kidding.
I think in those spots, like you just can't leave really, unless
you can't.
Unless your religion is interfering with unless you have religious obligations or you can't hold your head up at all, it almost feels sinful to leave the game.
Yeah, I felt really bad about leaving, but there was nothing I could do. I was going to be the punter or get kicked out of the place sleeping at the table.
Yeah, 24 hours. 24 hours in, it's a pretty long time.
Yeah.
So that segues into the next question of your least favorite session of all time.
I don't know. I mean, coming into day 3 of the main event, just having everything bad in the world happen and almost soft bubbling it. My first time playing it, that felt like complete dog shit. That felt pretty bad. That's something that really sucked in the moment, because I think I went into day 3 with 265K at, was it 816 or something like that? I can't remember, something like that, and just everything went bad. So yeah, it was. I can't remember it was just like having kings and c-bet flop, and I mean, not c-bet, just ace high flops and just everything just running into sets. But yeah, pretty much that session.
Yeah, that's pretty brutal, especially in a time like the main event. You don't want to run bad, but unfortunately, I think there are lots of people that end up busting out of the main event every single year, right? It's like
before then, yep.
It's like the Highlander. There can only be one winner at the end of the day. Kind of funny. It reminds me of one of my MTT stories when I was probably 21 at it was a WSOP circuit event in Tunica, Mississippi. And I've never been drawn to tournaments, but 21, I played some tournaments, and buy into the first one, which is a $200 or $300 event. There was 1,000 runners, or it was just a shit ton of people. Mm-hmm. And this is before the rebuys and the re-entries too. So it was actually 1,000 human beings bought into this tournament. And I made the final table. I didn't have the chip lead, but I had something absurd it was something ridiculous, 30% of the chips. Me, I had 30%, and the dude to my left had 30%, and he had slightly more than me. And I remember going to the final table where first was 60 up top, and there was 9 of us, and this elderly couple in the stands who were enjoy watching these final tables in the bleachers, kind of approached me, and they were giving me some coaching. They're calm down and to, take your time in the beginning. Don't take many chances. Like
solid.
Be solid. People lose most of their stack early on.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, I mean, I'm 21, so obviously very arrogant and sort of discount the advice, which, by the way, I don't know that it was great advice anyway, but I know this much. The very first hand on the restart, I got kings against the player who's in third place, and like they had aces. We get it in, and it was like, okay, so this is how this final table is going to go. And like I get in kings, and I'm not shitting you. I look back, I see the elderly couple like in the crowd. In the first hand, I double somebody up and lose, probably 40 or 50% of my stack, and they just kind of like, yeah, give me the shrug. Like, yeah,
I told you so.
I told you. What are you doing? I gave you the advice.
I'm tilting.
Yeah, I was like, oh God, like of course.
Extra needle, like on top of
extra needle as I get like what the hell are you gonna do with King's Pre? Like you just go broke. I mean, what are you gonna do? Yeah. That was. I ended up finishing 6th in that tournament. And the only reason I finished 6th was because I had so many chips that it took a like 3 or 4 double ups for me to lose my stack. But if I could have lost it faster, I think I would have. It was just like a total disaster of a day. But I think in hindsight, it's kind of funny. Whatever.
Yeah, that's a crazy story. Did you get coaching from the couple after? Did you approach them for coaching after you got 6 points?
Yeah, I spent all of my winnings on coaching to try to.
You just pre-booked.
Yeah, show me the way how to close out these final tables because I don't get it.
He hit you with the honey. I told you to play conservatively.
Yeah, like I mean, I just saw the look on their face was like, "Yup, see, I told you. What are you doing?" I'm like, oh my God,
that'd be so classic. That's so funny.
Oh yeah, it's funny memory. When you think about pots that you've won, do you have any hands that come to mind? Like any memorable big pots?
Any memorable big pots that I won? I mean, it's so hard in like tournament world. It just all kind of meshes together between some massive flip we needed to win, like on some final table. I don't know. I'm like the kind of poker player that only remembers the bad things and not too many of the really good things. And those kind of
I think it's not just poker players. This is how humans are constructed, right? Like Phil Galfond came on CPG and was talking about shot taking the big stakes and battling Ivy, and said that he had a day where basically he lost $400K, which was half of his bankroll, and that was a memorable loss. And he realizes that at some point his shot taking had to stick, but cannot remember it sticking, right? Like you remember the times that you face setbacks, but at some point it had to stick. He just doesn't remember when it happened because that's not a thing that we kind of focus on or think about.
No, we take the wins as like, oh, I've worked for this. And I don't know. It's like mentally like, okay, I don't expect to win, but I expect to get our fair share when we get the money in good, right?
You expect good things to happen. I think that's the expectation is like you keep doing the work, you keep plugging away. Eventually good things will happen. So when they do, it's not that they're expected. It is that they're expected eventually after you just, stack good decision on top of good decision over and over and over again.
Yeah. And that's why it's really hard to come down to maybe one hand. I know there's certain Sundays where I'm playing completely out of my mind, zoned and playing great. I've definitely had sessions where I can say, holy shit, I was playing kind of out of body the entire time. And I don't necessarily have that sensation every single time or even often, comparatively.
Yeah, you're just in flow.
Right, in flow. And I don't have that in flow, and I'm trying to find that more often.
It's one of those things. It's like one of those magic eye puzzles where like you kind of have to release control to find it. You can't like actively grab it. It's just one of those things that just kind of happens.
And for streaming, there's an extra element because I'm streaming, nearly every single session. So I don't only have to be in flow with the poker. I have to be in flow with the stream. with the feel, and then also making sure my thought processes out loud are good, my mental's good. So there's a few, I feel like, extra elements that we can kind of lose flow from while streaming, but
yeah, it is not beneficial to always verbalize your thought process out loud. It's draining. It takes energy.
It really is. Really
much
does.
easier when you just think and react. I think that, like, one of the indicators that I think I'm playing in flow or playing at a high level is I'm able to make good folds. I think that that's a thing that if it's questionable in one way or the other, I typically call. But being able to, like, fold in a hand where the other regs at the table, I just know that they're not folding very often, if ever. I think those moments, and then on Ignition, of course, you get the whole card, so then you can see if your fold is validated. And I'm at my most dangerous when I'm confident enough to make an exploitable fold, and the expectation is like, I don't even have to check the hand. I know that I know this was a good decision, and then you just keep playing hand after hand after hand. I mean, that's when, like, yeah, you probably don't want to come in contact with me at the poker table.
Where you're not just kind of making, not even marginal calls, but you're making just very good, strong folds in those situations, and then you're not even thinking about it after the fact. You've already moved on and you're on to playing great the next hand. Yeah, you can be
it's like
dangerous mental state.
Yeah, like I was playing 2KNL the other day, and like call a preflop raise with King 10 and like the flops Queen Jack 10, and villain's on the button and goes like pot over bet rip. And like it was like I knew I could see the future. Like when they bet pot on the turn, I'm like, they're ripping the river. You know, they've got whatever 1,200 behind and there's 900 in the pot. Like they're just always ripping. And so it was like a pretty trivial call because blocking ace king, and I sort of live by a heuristic that if I can predict what opponent's going to do before they do it, it's kind of more likely that they have more bluffs in their range than you might think. And so I just like snap it off with the pair of tens, and villain shows like 6-9 of diamonds. And then 30 minutes later, like I have ace queen and the flop's like queen 7-7, and somehow fold to a jam on the turn, like an overbet rip, and look it up, dude's got kings. And I'm like, you know, this is when poker's fun, when there's no questions in my mind. It's not like any fear. It's just, I'm reading the data points, I'm analyzing them at a high level, and I'm making great decisions. And like, that's a very fun time to be in the streets playing cards.
Yep. And you only get to that level when you're working your ass off. You don't just, I mean, you can find some flow if you don't have a lot of experience. You can, you know, I believe like every player state has some kind of flow, but the better we get and the harder we work, you know, the higher the win rate is when we get in that state and we just crush, right? So.
Yeah, and it has something to do with challenge too. The challenge needs to be a challenge that excites you, or a challenge that that resonates with you, that you can feel. I think that's when the flow state, you can really experience it, when, you know, you have something that drives you, maybe a stake that you haven't played before, or, you know, just whatever it is, just getting back in the streets and playing volume and like being a professional poker player, right? Because this podcast, doing it, creating content, building a business is very time consuming. And so I haven't had a ton of time to get in the streets. So for me, it's like, yeah, I'm going to rip off 100K sample of winning 10 BBs over 100 just so I can drop it on Twitter. And then, you know, that's what my aim and my goal is. And yeah, it's fun. It's fun for me, at least, where it's like, okay, I haven't been playing a ton, but I still got it. I can still compete at a high level, and I enjoy the thrill of competition and playing against, you know, players, the denizens that reside in the higher limit streets on Ignition.
Yeah, I mean, I love it, man. I mean, the competitiveness drives me as well, and that's one of the reasons why I'm in poker. I have a hard time finding that outside of poker, like after Black Friday when I was forced to, you know, give some other industries a shot. Always drawn back to poker from the competitive aspect, from being able to compete with yourself, and some of eventually, the best players in the world or the best players at the stakes you're currently playing. So yeah, I can completely understand that sentiment.
Yeah, and sometimes I think it's a sentiment that doesn't resonate with everyone, but because there are people that just want to play in like the easiest, most accessible games. But I think too, like that's sort of another perspective change that I've had where it's like, man, I get to play during the day. I know the day crew, higher stakes cash game people are of a higher caliber than the night crew, but fuck it. This is when I get to play. So let's throw down. Let's see what dude who's battling at 11 a.m. on the East Coast is made of, or these 5 dudes. And like, some of the games I play in are not necessarily great games, but it's challenging. It's fun. And I'm just really enjoying the process.
Yeah, I like that. Just still knowing that you're going to be in the tougher pool at that time and still kind of going forward and not just taking the easy way out. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, basically by the time 8 o'clock rolls around, like I don't typically have much to give in the realm of energy. I'm pretty much spent at that point.
Right. Yeah. Whereas I'm starting most of my sessions at 7 p.m., 8 p.m. Eastern and needing to go till like 2, 3 a.m.
Yeah. I've lived that life. It doesn't work with me anymore. I value being a normal human being, waking up at like 8 a.m. More than staying awake all night to play in the better games. It's like, I mean,
right.
Tournament schedule obviously different because you got no choice. You gotta play when the people play.
Yep. As an East Coast grinder, we don't have a choice. That's why we're the toughest out there.
Yeah.
Got to be grinding the late night stuff. And I got buddies like God's Big Toe's a big friend of mine. He's like, oh yeah, I'll play a full Sunday session. I'm done by like 7, 8 p.m. and played everything. I'm like, wow, I'm in 3 o'clock in the morning here, buddy.
Yeah. It's, again, East Coast, you got to do what you got to do. So absolutely. I got to battle the daytime grinders. Let's go to war and see what happens.
In a world where a fish donk bets the flop and you don't know what to do, one man,
Coach Brad Wilson,
has a surefire plan to neutralize flop leads and rip that dunk to shreds. Nuffle. Available now. Go to chasingpokergreatness.com/Nuffle. Rated R.
So, John, you've used neutralized flop leads in the past 24 hours, correct?
Yeah, so I got basically the slide with all the info on it on Friday evening, and yesterday I played a session of 1KNL on Ignition and played one particular pot that I remember where a fish just donked flop, turn, river into me, and I ended up winning with a hand that I would have folded before looking at the slide, but I ended up winning like a $400 pot instead, and the course is $99, so definitely paid for itself very, very quickly. And I think that'll be the case for even people that aren't playing as big as 5-10 no limit. Like, I think this is a course that will very, very quickly pay for itself given how much more donking there is at lower stakes. And I think one of the most common questions I see asked in the Greatness Village Slack group is, what do donks mean? How do I deal with donk bets? I think that's got to be like in the top 3 most frequently asked questions.
You ought to feel very excited when somebody donks into you because some good things are about to happen.
You said like you probably don't need anyone to teach the course, or like you can just look at the slide and learn all the info yourself. I feel like you, Brad, will have to be there because I'm almost sure that anybody who looks at the slide won't believe it looking at what they're supposed to do, and we'll have to confirm with you that like you didn't make a massive typo somewhere and that this is actually what they're supposed to do, because it's pretty shocking the optimal way to deal with fish donking into you on the flop is.
If you'd like to check out neutralize flop leads so that you're never again confused when a fish leads into you in a single raise pot, head to chasingpokergreatness.com/Nuffle. That's chasingpokergreatness.com/NUFFLE. And now, back to the show.
What about a bad session? Your least favorite session? I think that or actually least favorite. Sorry, erase that. Pots lost. When you think of pots lost, do any pots kind of come to mind?
I mean, yeah, there's a few, considering I've bubbled some major final tables in my day. You know, I have a pot where it's just, I mean, these are just like bad beat stories. Who wants to hear these? Just bubbling the final table of you remember back in the day, Full Tilt had their weekly major.
Everybody had a weekly major.
Yeah, I think it was a 150. I don't know. I don't know. I'm thinking of something then, but I remember it just being just a massive cooler, probably for so much equity when there were 6 figs up top, just running aces into another pair of aces into kings and losing to the pair of kings on a still final table bubble with 6 figs up top when we were, you know, top 4 stack or something. And that kind of bubbling from that was probably something that almost sounds like a joke. And
how'd you deal with that?
Oh, I probably hammer fisted my keyboard and spiked my mouse. Like, not good. This was a young sixes. It was definitely something spazzy. But I've also like final table the Venetian deep stack. I remember that, and it was like 60K up top, and just lose aces to jacks for all the money to get sixth place for like 6-7K or something like that, which was sad as shit. But those are the 2 pots that like front of mind for big equity that would have done a lot for me at the time.
Yeah, it's a side effect. I mean, it's going to happen in the MTT scene where you need it and you just don't get it. My patented move back when I was 21 or 22 was basically I had the set of poker chips that I think everybody had. Mm-hmm. And when I say that, I think you should know what I'm talking about, like the little clay blue ones and white ones and black ones. And I would constantly be shuffling them. And like my patented move was just to grab a handful of them and just chunk it against a wall. Like just something bad happens and boom, and like the chips just shatter. That was my go-to move when I was super young and couldn't really deal with my emotions very well.
Yeah, I was there too. Mine was just hammer fisting keyboards. I don't even know how many. Probably went through 5 keyboards and smashing some mouses back in the day. Yeah. Don't do that kind of stuff anymore, even though I do think I broke a mouse on stream about maybe 2-3 years ago, but we're reformed now. We're reformed.
No more mice breaking. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just a stupid mouse. So whatever.
And I feel better after I do it, even though it's a complete, just like, it's stupid. I think the last time I broke one on stream, I didn't have a backup or something.
Yeah. So you got what you deserved.
Yeah, for sure.
You got what you deserved. But I will say that there is a benefit in kind of releasing that energy as long as you don't ruminate, stew on it. It doesn't affect you like for hours. I think that like experiencing anger is a thing that you ought to do when you feel angry, especially in MTTs, because if you just hold it in, like eventually you just kind of explode and burn your house down one day.
Yeah, I believe in that. And I've like I say, I mean, I'm fortunate enough to not really ever take whatever's happening in poker to the family or off the table. So if I can, just get angry real quick and vent for like 2 seconds and get it out of my system, it helps me feel better. I don't think that's good for everybody. But trying to pretend like I'm not angry and holding it in the entire time doesn't feel too great either. So
yeah, it's not healthy. Emotions are meant to be felt, and the reality is poker's a very emotional game. And when you say that I don't feel emotions, well, I'm just going to say bullshit. I don't believe you. Like that's just, you're a human being. You're born with emotions. If you don't feel it, then I guess maybe you're a sociopath. But I don't think that's something to be happy about, not feeling any emotions ever.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I don't know if it's always healthy to do some of the things, if there's a healthy way to release those. But, I do think it's okay to sometimes feel a little bit of tilt in the moment or just release that energy, that negative energy, just releasing it. I agree.
Yeah, and ultimately for the listener at home, it's the goal in poker is not to never feel your emotions. The goal is to recover faster from being emotionally compromised. It's just to increase your ability to recover when something doesn't go well, because at the end of the day, performance is all about recovery. And if you're able to recover from a bad session or a bad tournament, and it allows you to play more hands that day or over the course of a year, you will make more money over the course of the year if you don't require like a sleep cycle to fully recover, right? So ultimately, your job is just to recover faster and faster and faster and faster, to the point to where like something happens, you feel the emotion, and then you're able to just kind of shake it off and recover quickly and get in some more hands.
So for yourself, I have a question. When you're playing live and you have that feeling, like obviously if you're sitting at home, you can grumble a little bit, right? If something happens behind the screen. When you're live, do you get up from the table if you start to feel yourself feeling angry, or do you not really get that live as much anymore?
Well, it's hard for me to remember what live poker is at this stage of life. I think in live poker, part of my process was to take a walk probably every hour at least. And this is in like time rate games where I was paying for my walk. But I think that the mistake people make is thinking that like sitting down in a chair for 12 hours a day and not moving at all is like healthy or good. You need to you need to release energy, walk around, do some push-ups, stretch, do breathing exercises, and just take care of yourself. If I ever get I guess the levels in which I get emotionally compromised are fairly low at this stage in my career. So if I ever find myself wanting to snap at someone at the poker table, then that's a pretty clear indicator that either A, I need to not play anymore, or B, I need to walk around and try to recover. And if I cannot recover, then just rack up and leave, because that's like my indicator that like you're not in a mindset, you're not in a mood to play at the level that you would like to play at, and it's just going to end. It just never fails to end regrettably.
Yeah, it's really hard to recover if it's just kind of lingering, especially live. And it's nice when you just get up and leave. You're not stuck there, especially with cash. You can just rack up.
I think my online training though is like so good for live, because like online is like, it's the beast, right? Like one of my students started playing zone poker because he was having problems recovering from hands that he thought he misplayed. He was ruminating. He would get stuck in mindset loops, spend a lot of energy dwelling on hands he may or may not have misplayed. And so he gets the bright idea to just play zone poker, because then he doesn't have time to ruminate and think about it, right? Like basically this is like classic high performer thought. Like, okay, I'm having problems recovering quickly. Now, how do I get around that? Well, I'm just going to play poker in a way that I don't have to recover, because I don't have time to think about it, right? Which ended in complete and utter disaster, because what happened was he didn't have any time to recover in zone poker. And so he just had 10 regrettable things happen all at the same time, and then just crumbled straight onto the floor. So because of playing a lot of volume and a lot of hands online and having to recover much more quickly than live poker, I think that's sort of trained me to where it's hard to get me compromised in the live arena, just because like you always have time. You've got a few minutes beforehand. Sometimes you go 15 minutes without really doing anything, and like you've just got a lot of time to recover. Whereas online, bad shit happens, and great, you got four more hands popping up that you got to deal with.
Yep, and it can compound so much faster and easier online than live. You just sit there, and like you said, you got 15, 20 minutes before you even maybe have to make a reasonable decision sometimes. So yeah.
So you just, online is like the great training ground to improve mindset, improve technical poker skill, and put yourself in a position to be a winning live player. I think that like every live player who has aspirations of moving up stakes ought to put in some volume and some time in the online game, because only good things can happen, really.
Yep, I agree.
What would you consider a weakness you have related to your poker game? And then what steps do you take regularly to overcome said weakness?
I'd certainly think sometime mental game for me is something I've been improving on greatly. But it was certainly a bigger leak. Maybe even like the last time we did a podcast between today, still something I'm improving on, because, you know, sometimes with streaming and I've had this competitive leak my, you know, entire life where I just get blinded competitively and just get too emotionally and caught up, and I invest so much and I feel the letdown, and then sometimes that can hang over to other games. So I would say just being more mentally not so attached to some of these tournaments, you know, in these situations where, you know, something like those massive beats happen in the game and needing to recover fast. So sort of like your student, you know, I think it can be tough when you're playing a ton of volume. You have high expectations, you work your ass off. I guess the perfect word would be for maybe a little entitlement tilt, right? You can get a little entitled tilt.
Yeah, a little bit. But when you say competitor, what do you mean by competitor?
Well, I feel like I just like, maybe I know how competitive I may be, as we all are, right? But I think I just handle sometimes losing at portions of the session or in certain stages of the tournament a little poorly, where it may affect my decisions for the rest of the session, maybe even for a small time frame before I click out of it. And I'm much better at recovering, but I still think like I know I'm competing my hardest, and then I feel like I just mentally feel kind of that letdown.
This is
or if I make a mistake, you know, it.
Yeah, this is the coach in me coming out. But like when you say you're highly competitive, that's like an indicator to me that basically you don't like losing. You don't handle losing well at all. That's what I think you mean by that.
Yeah, I mean, it's the gift and the curse. Like I will take that, and it pushes me to work harder, but at the same time, there has to be some level of expectation that you're gonna get your teeth kicked in a lot in poker, and you have to just work on getting better in the things you can control.
Yeah. And
just, I mean, almost kind of forget about the things you can't, because you're always going to get unlucky in spots, you know?
Yeah. And, you know, I think that like as someone who has competed in things my entire life and who has a sister that refuses to play board games with him to this day because of the way that I may or may not have handled myself historically. I understand, you know, the sentiment of winning, of identifying winning as feeling good and identifying losing as feeling bad. And in poker, man, it's so hard, right? It's so hard to separate, because what I always come back to, and I guess the way that I frame my sessions is just like, was my decision good? Like, if my decision is good, I feel like I won. And here's a classic example that happened in last week's Poker Power Hour. I think I've already talked about this, but I want to talk about it again because it gives sort of an insight into just how I think about the game and how I approach poker. We broke down a hand where a guy who plays poker at a high level opened ace tray of clubs from the small blind facing the big blind and at 200 NL in a cash game. Big blind defends, and the flop was queen 4 deuce with one club. And the guy bet out. The big blind, who's a reg, raised. And the PPH attendee bet 3-bet and talked a lot about why they decided to bet 3-bet, because they need some weaker hands to bet 3-bet with here, because theory has the big blind raising with a lot of middle pair 4X and deuce X. So basically, because they need some bluffs, this is a very natural bluff. It's a gut shot with backdoor flush draw. So anyway, they bet 3-bet. The turn's a 4, and we talked a lot about sizing, the sizing to choose if you continue to barrel there. And my suggestion was a very small sizing on the turn to kind of set up a river jam. I think that like the board pairing means you don't need a ton of protection. The board's fairly dry. So he ends up betting small in real time. He's a very strong player, this kid. He bets small, big blind calls, and now the river's a 5. So he makes his wheel, and there's like a pot size bet left. And so basically the kid jams, right? And we're talking about the jam and talking about the hand, and villain folded. And I think about poker in a way that villain folded queen jack off. So they folded top pair. And I'm happy. I would be happier that villain folded. And it means that I lose or that I win a smaller pot than villain snapping it with queen jack off. If villain snaps with queen jack off, I would actually feel way worse about the path that we reach the river. And I think that like that's sort of how I think about poker is if the plan was foobar from the jump and the hands we're targeting to try to fold out, if they don't fold them when we get there, well, a much more likelier outcome is we don't get there and we shove as a bluff and they snap off the hands that we're targeting to fold, right? So anyway, that's sort of like that's just how I go about thinking about the game is like, if I have a plan and I execute the plan and they do something unexpected, even if I hit my miracle on the river, it makes me feel bad because then I think, we play out this situation 1,000 times. This villain is going to totally own my face because most of the time I don't make my wheel and they always call with their top pair, right?
Yep. Yeah, you always get snapped and lose money in the long run in that spot, and you feel good about the way you played it because in this situation, you got lucky, right? But if you play it like that every other time, you're just going to get wrecked.
Right. And I guess that's like basically the feedback mechanism in poker is so distorted that it's hard to even discern if you won or lost the pot. If you won or lost the hand through your decision-making process, it's obvious whether you win or lose the pot, not always so obvious whether you got the better or worse of an exchange.
Yeah, and that's one thing that's really helped me over time with the coaching and, studying the game myself very intensely with the solvers and whatnot is I don't necessarily still have that leak as much as I used to because I'm getting the feedback like, hey, you're playing fine. These spots are all overall looking good, obviously making money and doing well. It's just part of the process. Let's fix the things we can fix. Some of these little, you're just going to get lucky. These things are just going to happen when you're playing volume. Poker is not a get rich quick scheme, right? You're going to have to put in volume and put in work and put in time.
Yeah, control the controllables, like you said. Yep. You can only control what you can control, and the rest of it just kind of happens. And yeah, not to say that like don't get angry, don't get upset to the listener. You're going to feel those emotions, and it's appropriate to feel them. But at the end of the day, the only thing you can control are the decisions that you make. And so you may as well start there.
Agreed. Yeah, that's good.
Have you ever strongly believed something about poker only to reverse course later on? And if so, what led to that change of belief?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm so always evolving, I didn't really understand. I thought, well, maybe when I first came back, I thought, it's almost debatable. It's almost debatable to say because I know a lot of people really think you can just kind of have basic charts and go the exploitative route only. You don't really need the theory side. I don't know. I feel like I've just become so much of a stronger player just studying those kind of fundamentals. And I still have people who really don't believe in studying the GTO side of things and only just think they need the exploitative side and they'll be fine. And it comes a lot from a lot of the guys that just play live and think this kind of stuff's a waste. I'm not saying I thought that at the beginning. I just didn't think it was as necessary as it is. I was always a student of the game, but now at this point, I've almost complete 180. And I think learning the game in this manner and then kind of mixing in learning to exploit as well is just the best to me.
Yeah, I mean, you need baseline. You need a North Star for scenarios that are foreign, that maybe you don't encounter all the time. You need to have a strategy that is fairly strong, and whether or not sometimes you just don't have any available or obvious exploitative route that you can take, and so in those moments you have to lean on the theory. And actually, if you understand the theory, that actually gives you understanding as to what the exploits ought to look like, which is also beneficial. So to me, everything kind of works together in this kind of harmonious way.
Yes. Yeah. And it's funny. It just sounds so basic when you say it, like simple, right? But there's people who fight back on it, who I don't know if it's just being stubborn or they think they haven't figured out their way, or they're only interested in beating the games that they are currently playing because they don't need to beat another game, right? This is my local casino. These are 18 player pool that I always run into, and I'm crushing this game for this amount of money. But I just, as I'm in the game more and in these communities more, I still see that out there some, and just kind of wanted to touch on that.
Yeah.
I just find it very interesting.
It is. And I would just say that live poker is a really good way for your poker game to deteriorate over time. It's a very good way to not improve or grow on a regular basis, because I don't think the competition level of live players challenge people in a way that fosters growth, right? And I know that the worst I've ever played was probably online. The worst I ever played online poker was coming off a stretch of playing live high stakes poker for 3 or 4 years and not really playing much online. I had to become stronger fundamentally. I had to go back to basics. I just had to get sharper, even at comparatively much smaller stakes online. I think another thing too is I just kind of, whatever. I don't even care anymore when people disagree with me or I say something that is somewhat controversial. I think I said something on Twitter and a bunch of people disagreed, or about bad calls don't give me nightmares, bad folds give me nightmares, or bad folds shouldn't give you nightmares. Bad calls should not give you nightmares. Bad folds should. And a lot of people disagree with that sentiment very heavily. And I just gotten to the point to where I don't care. I know
cares, yeah.
I don't give a shit anymore. Just people regurgitate bad poker wisdom all the time, everywhere, even from, seemingly higher level players. And I just kind of shrug my shoulders and I'm I'm on my path. I have what I'm convinced to be the best way to learn and improve at this game, that I believe in 1,000%. And so ultimately it's not my job to prove to the unbelievers out there. My job is to help the people that trust me and invest in me. And that's what I focus on.
And I think that's a great way to go about it, right? You don't have to, you're never going to make everybody happy. It's just no way. And there's just going to be haters.
Yeah.
There's always going to be people hating.
I'm open to improve my process, but I got to say that I'm very, very confident in my process at this point. Very, very, very confident. There might be better ways to approach it, more efficient, but yeah, I don't really, I guess when you know that the shit that you're doing is really, really, really powerful and really, really good, it kind of doesn't matter whether people believe what you say or not.
No, because you know what you put into your product and you know what, your clients or your customers are saying, and that's all that really matters.
Yeah. And again, like you said, you're going to have haters, and you can't convert them no matter what you do. So why even bother?
Right.
Cool, man. So a couple more questions, and yeah, we'll get you out of here. What's a project you're working on that's near and dear to your heart?
It's funny. Well, I have been doing a poker coaching study stream that me and God's Big Toe kind of started. We were fortunate enough to have you on as a guest. And we've kind of just created that. It's kind of original. There was nothing else like it on Twitch. And we've been doing it with poker coaching. And we really enjoy that. The community's growing there. We're doing some more hand history review type stuff to help out, more of the micro stakes, low stakes players who may not have access or can afford coaching, and kind of giving back to the communities that help support us. So I love those kind of projects personally. So kind of still doing the poker coaching stuff. I'm doing a little bit more coaching myself. So, kind of getting coaching on coaching. Like I was asking you some questions before and doing that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much what I'm working on. And obviously trying to become a better poker player every single day.
Awesome, man. And final question for the listener, if they want to learn more about you, where do they go on the World Wide Web?
Yeah, you guys can start on Twitter at Crazysixes, and I do stream probably 4 or 5 nights a week on twitch.tv Crazysixes. We are a sponsored streamer with Ignition. We also have a weekly stream that we do on Global Poker where we host a home game. We create some content for Learn Pro Poker as well. I posted some study streams for those guys, and of course, poker coaching. So what I'm trying to say is you can find me out there. I am a student of the game. I love it. I feel like I'm still very young in the game. I still feel like I'm very young.
We feel that way, Shaundle.
I feel that way.
I don't know if it's the truth anymore. I'm blinded. When I do the math, I'm like, holy shit! Like, I'm old now. I feel.
Yeah, but for
I feel young. I feel young. Yeah, we're old for poker. I mean, think about
young for poker, dude. Poker players can. I mean, who's the guy that won the main? What is he in his 50s? Like, it just doesn't stop. There's always opportunity if you love this game. I feel like I'm still like a youth for poker, especially since I came back. I think that's the thing. I lost it after Black Friday. I missed it. And now that I have it back, I'm still like a baby, it feels like, again, which is exciting.
I think more so I was speaking to, like, Negreanu's nickname is Kid Poker, and like at some point that is not an appropriate nickname. Like at some point you outgrow being Kid Poker. And in the same way, like when I used to play, I started when I was 20 years old. So I remember being the youngest person playing cards, especially back when I started. I was always the youngest. And sometimes I play games where I'm the oldest now. And that's just an interesting sort of, time goes on whether you want it to or not. And I want to still be the young gun instead of like the old weathered veteran of the game.
I want to be the young gun too, but there's perks to being the old guy who just gets underestimated and crushes, right? Or people don't think you're capable of certain plays.
I don't think I'm that old yet, Shaundle. Come on.
Hey, look at this boomer, guys. We got this boomer in the game.
Yeah. No, I'm not OMC level yet. Like I still got that fiery youth in me.
See, exactly. That's what I wanted to hear. I was just trying to drag it out of you.
Yeah, no, it's in me. It's in me. Awesome. Man, it's been great having you on. We'll do it again. Yeah, we'll catch up again in a year or so. Maybe we'll hang out at the pokercoaching.com meetup if that thing happens after the pandemic. But yeah, it's I'm ready to start getting out there in the world again. And maybe we can do a live CPG interview. That'd be pretty cool.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, I mean, I will certainly be in Vegas. I'm vaccinated, so I'll be out there for the series. And I plan on probably getting out there for the online series this July. I don't know if this full schedule has been announced, but I know they have teased it that they're going to start it around then. So I plan on trying to get out there for both.
Awesome, man. Well, we'll sync up soon. always a pleasure having you on. Thank you for your time and your energy. Very, very grateful.
All right. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it. And CPG community, thank you guys. You guys are awesome. Take care, everybody.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Chasing Poker Greatness. If you have yet to subscribe to the show, please take a second to do so on Apple Podcasts or wherever your favorite place to listen to podcasts may be. For more content from me, Coach Brad, please visit our YouTube channel at youtube.com/enhanceyouredge, and I'll see you next time.